Hi, I'm Ravi Agrawal, Foreign Policy's Editor-in-Chief. Welcome to a recording of FP Live. My guest today is well known to Foreign Policy's audience. Javad Zarif served as Iran's foreign minister from 2013 to 2021 and as vice president from August 2024 until March of this year. He joins me now from Tehran. Dr. Zarif, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning to you, and it's very good to be with you.
It's our pleasure. So let me start with the so-called 12-day war in June. So just to recap, Israel launched a series of attacks on Iran's military and nuclear facilities. They killed several top military leaders and nuclear scientists. Then America joined in and bombed 3 nuclear sites. Tehran's response was quite muted, and you weren't in government when this happened, but you are, of course, well connected in Iranian politics. You continue to observe it closely. From my perspective, the 12-day war seemed extremely damaging for Iran. How do you see it?
The 12-year war, let's put it in perspective, occurred just 2 days before my friends in the foreign ministry were supposed to go for a new round of negotiations with their American counterparts. So it created an image in Iran that negotiations for the United States are just a pretext for an attack, which is very damaging. From my perspective, I believe in diplomacy, and I believe this was very damaging to diplomacy in general. Secondly, it was a premeditated attack, not only against military and nuclear targets, but against innocent civilians. Many innocent civilians were killed. Military leaders were not targeted in their offices or in the war front, but they were targeted at home when they were sleeping with their children and spouses. And that, according to what I know of international law, constitutes a war crime. Nuclear scientists, as well as other scientists, were murdered only because they were scientists. This is an extremely dangerous precedent that these people were murdered. So
Dr. Zarif,
created
if
a
I
very
may,
bad image of diplomacy.
if I may, it's hard to disagree with anything you've just said, but respectfully, that didn't answer my question. And my question,
I will answer your question.
Yeah, was Iran itself so much more damaged from those 12 days than Israel or any other players here?
Well, let me just make one point. Iran was damaged. This was an aggression, and all aggressions usually damage the victim. But a myth of Israeli invincibility was shattered. Iran has been under sanctions for 40 years. Nobody sells Iran any military equipment. But with all of that, Iran was capable to break the so-called Iron Dome of the Israelis, be able to attack Israeli targets, Israeli military targets from Iran only with its missiles and drones and cruise missiles. So we were damaged, but we showed one thing, and that is important for everybody to understand, and that is that Iran is not an easy prey, that Israel and the United States, 2 nuclear-armed powers, came together to attack Iran. Even the United States came to the rescue of their ally. And at the end of the day, Iran was standing tall. I think that's quite a major achievement for Iran.
Tell me how you interpret Iran as standing tall after so much of its nuclear facilities were, the White House says it was destroyed, but other intelligence may suggest at least it was damaged. And then, as I mentioned, Iran's air defenses were basically taken out of the game. So many personnel, nuclear, military, politicians even were killed. How do you see that as Iran standing tall after this? And again, I'm not arguing anything you said about Israel here. One could make the case that after October 7, the myth of Israeli invincibility has been punctured, but hasn't Iran's as well?
Well, obviously, we were the victim of an attack, of an aggression, unprovoked, and basically a surprise attack. So we were damaged. But that's not the point. The point is we responded, and we showed that we cannot be simply targeted and that the aggressor could escape the consequences. Even when the United States attacked Iran, it was convinced that Iran is not a kind of country that would simply take it sitting down. And as President Trump himself has pointed out, they understood that Iran would retaliate. And that is why they emptied all the barracks in our neighborhood, and knowing that Iran would retaliate. I think that's an important point to take note of for the future, to see that dealing with Iran in this way will not resolve your problem, will not resolve America's problem, will not resolve anybody's problem. So
here's one thing I genuinely don't understand. How is any of this in Tehran's strategic interest? I think it's well known Iran does fund groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels. And meanwhile, respectfully, the Iranian economy has gone from bad to worse. You have some 60% unemployment among working age Iranians. Inflation is at 35%. GDP per capita is half what it was in 2012. I could go on. All of this is before the 12-day war. Iran used to be this great empire, and its economy today is smaller than that of Bangladesh or Chile. Explain to me what Iran gets out of either pursuing conflict with Israel or the perception that it is pursuing a nuclear bomb, which leads to this kind of a response from the West, right or wrong?
Well, we have a process of securitization that Israel and particularly Netanyahu have been following against Iran since the 90s. If you listen to Netanyahu, in the mid-90s, he said Iran was 6 months away from a nuclear bomb. And we're about, 30 years from then? And we are still, at least before the bombing, a few months away from the bomb. So Iran is not seeking a nuclear bomb. That's a hype. We're not responsible for the narrative that Israel tries to create. Let me make one point here, and I think that's important. The existential threat to Israel is peace. That is why it objected to the JCPOA. JCPOA, which I negotiated, would have made certain, verifiably, that Iran did not produce a nuclear bomb. Why did Israel object to that? Because it created calm in our neighborhood. As for the groups that are fighting Israel, Iran is not, let's not forget the fact that they're fighting occupation, they're fighting tyranny, they're fighting genocide, they're fighting mass starvation. They're not fighting for Iran. I can tell you for a fact that in my 40 previous years of experience as a diplomat, I did not see a single shot being fired by any of these groups to advance Iranian interests. They were fighting for their own lives, for their own homeland.
Everything you're saying here about Israel, I'm going to leave that to the Israelis to defend. So I certainly don't speak for them. But again, what is in Iran's strategic interest here? So let's say you're right in saying that Iran doesn't want a bomb. If it wanted a bomb, it could get a bomb. I'll give you that. But the perception is damaging, number one. And number two, after October 7, the perception also was clear that, Iran has funded these, what are known here as proxy groups. You will call them something else. But what does Iran get out of this? Because the offshoot of it, as you yourself are admitting today, is that the Iranian economy is suffering. Iran has faced these attacks from America and from Israel. And how any of that is in Iran's strategic interest, again, is something I'm not understanding.
Well, did we cause that? You are replacing the cause and effect. The cause of all of this is occupation. The cause of all of this is apartheid. The cause of all of this is genocide in Palestine. We did not cause that. As soon as that stops, you will not have people fighting over it. Hamas did not take orders from Tehran in order to attack or in order to defend itself. It was in a process of back and forth, and we have seen from since October 7th. Now, you say Iran's economy has suffered. I can tell you that United States and Iran engaged in a zero-sum game. And in a zero-sum game, everybody will suffer. The United States was capable, through maximum pressure of President Trump, to put serious damage on Iranian economy. But was the objective to damage Iranian economy? If their objective was to limit Iranian nuclear capabilities, the fact of the matter is, Iranian nuclear capabilities before President Trump took office, Trump won. And now, just before the war, has grown 10 times. So we suffered in our objectives of growing, of developing, but the United States also suffered. But we did not start this. Actually, I spent with John Kerry many days and months in Vienna in order to reach an agreement. We did not break that agreement. Somebody else broke that agreement. So we should not be blamed for the consequences of somebody else's bad faith.
I should say something here. I cannot defend, it is not my job to defend a US administration or an Israeli administration. As an analyst, I have criticized the Trump administration's withdrawal from the JCPOA. I just want that on the record here. But again, Dr. ظریف, at the crux of this, I still don't understand what Iran is getting out of its current posture. And what I'm going to put to you is this. What you're describing as a genocide in Israel, let's say all of that is correct. Why must the Iranian people suffer? Because I'm not seeing the Saudi people suffer. I'm not seeing the Turkish people suffer. I'm not seeing the Egyptians suffer. I'm not seeing Iraqis suffer. What is it about Iran that makes this such a special case for you and your country and your people, for them to suffer so much? Whatever the perception is, the perception that Iran is building a bomb, that Iran is funding all these groups, you can disagree on whether that's true, but that perception is ultimately what is hurting Iran. And therefore, the question remains, why not change that perception? Why not open up? Why not do something different?
Well, let's discuss the past and discuss the future. I wrote in your magazine talking about a different future and a different paradigm. So I'm all for a different future. But let's talk about the past. Who started this? Who destroyed JCPOA? We negotiated in good faith. We spent a lot of time. Who tried? Benjamin Netanyahu, he has written in his book that he made it his life's mission to destroy an agreement that the international community applauded. Now, he has been able to sell a lie to the international community. In 1990, when Israel decided to start the so-called peace process, which it never intended to be a peace process, with the Arab world, it decided to replace its enemy. And that enemy became Iran. Before that, the enemy was Palestinians, terrorists, Arabs. Then all of a sudden, it started to be an Iranian threat. Even biblical stories were changed, from Cyrus to Leicester and Mordecai. So, and Purim. Purim was represented as an anti-Iran, as a historic anti-Iran perspective. So why is it that somebody can sell a lie to the American people, to the international community, at the expense of the United States and at the expense of the international community, only in order to survive? Netanyahu is doing this only in order to survive. His survival depends on chaos. His survival depends on crises. And that is why immediately after the 12-day war, he started the war against Syria. Immediately after the Syrian war, he started the occupation, the total occupation of Gaza. He has rejected every peace offer.
So Dr. ظریف, I want to ask you if after the 12-day war, whether China is now helping to rebuild Iran's air defenses and ballistic missile capability. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I'm not privy to that type of information because, as you know, I've been out of government for 6 months. Now I only teach and think, and write once in every while.
That's the best place to be. Let me ask you a similar question. You may also not want to answer this one, but the so-called E3, that's Britain, France, and Germany, are talking about so-called snapback sanctions. This would basically reimpose certain UN sanctions on Iran. To me, the timing is interesting. Is your reading of this that this could be a moment now where reformists in Iran might be in the ascendancy, where there might be a willingness to talk to the United States again for another nuclear deal of some sort?
Well, let's not confuse domestic and foreign policy. I think what the E3 are trying to do is, first of all, unfounded, because Iran was observing fully JCPOA even a year after Trump left the JCPOA. It was Europe that failed to implement its own commitments. I remember after Trump withdrew from JCPOA, the Europeans urged us not to stop and continue, and they made 11 commitments in 2 sessions in June and September of 2018, to me personally. And they were not able to even implement one single one of them. They decided to create a 19th century barter agreement with Iran. They were not even able to do that. Now I don't know what audacity they have in order to try to use the dispute resolution mechanism. It's not called snapback, as you know, in the JCPOA or the Security Council. It's called dispute resolution mechanism. Iran resorted to dispute resolution mechanism during the time that I was foreign minister, many times. We went through the entire process. The Europeans made promises to us to implement some of their own commitments, let alone American commitments, and they failed. And that is why we took remedial measures. They cannot take remedial measures against remedial measures, legally speaking. Now, the timing is interesting too, because a few weeks ago, as I wrote in Foreign Policy, they were basically applauding Israeli violation of international law, attacking Iranian sites. The German chancellor said we are doing that Israel is doing our dirty work. So, which option? They use war, and then they use diplomacy, and then they use mechanism in order to resolve disputes. This is indicative of bad faith. But now, let's move away from legalities. What good does it do to them? What did President Trump gain by withdrawing from JCPOA? Do we live in a safer world today? Will Europe live in a safer world if they use this dispute resolution mechanism in bad faith in order to go back to Security Council resolutions that we all decided to stop? What is it that they try to gain? They try to support Israel. They even went as far as calling it self-defense, some of them, including the E3, that are trying to use this mechanism. I think they should go back to their policy drawing board and see what this is going to gain them. What are they going to get? I think their diplomatic ways of moving forward. I wrote an article in The Guardian talking about a Middle East network for non-proliferation and nuclear cooperation. I wrote in your paper talking about non-aggression pact. So there are a whole range of options.
I wanted to bring up that article, actually. And once again, not for me to defend European policy or the United States' policy here, but I can challenge both sides, and I can challenge you as well as a journalist. So In that foreign policy article, you wrote that Iran can go from an approach centered on confronting perpetual threats to one focused on exploiting opportunities. You went on to say this is not only feasible, but profoundly in the interest of Iran. Elaborate a little bit on this, because I think that gets at the crux of everything we've been discussing so far. I've been pushing you on how anything that's happened in the past is in Iran's interests. I couldn't quite understand how it was. But let's talk about the future. What would a better domestic and foreign policy look like for Iran and for the Iranian people?
Well, you talk about whether it was in Iran's best interest had Iran had other options. You don't have other options when you're attacked. You don't have other options.
Sorry,
you don't have other options
Iran does not need to fund Hamas. It doesn't need to fund Hezbollah. I don't see, again, not every country has to.
You gave us examples of Arab countries. Every single one of them supports these groups.
Every single one of your allies support these groups. Qatar supports them. Turkey supports them. Hamas's officers are stationed in Qatar. Israel is trying to distract the attention from its atrocities to Iran. This is not Iran's war. This is Israeli aggression against Palestinians. If the Israelis try to divert attention from the real cause by simply picking on Iran, it will not resolve the problem. Now, I said Iran for the past 220 years has been subjected to humiliation. Now, for the first time in 220 years, Iran was capable of showing to the world that it can stand up against two nuclear armed powers and respond to them and not get down to its knees, as President Trump once said. You remember, President Trump once said, total surrender. Now, you see, again, I have to tell you that I'm not here representing Iranian government. I'm now speaking as an analyst and as somebody who hopes to have a better future in our global relations. But I can tell you that the Iranian people did not surrender. It wasn't just the Iranian government. The people stood with the nation, not necessarily with the government, with their country, in order to confront external aggression. Now, we have proven that. Now, we have a solid foundation to look to the future. That future can be a future of opportunities, a future of possibilities. And we can see possibilities in the nuclear deal by a consortium. We can see possibilities in the route from Nakhchivan to Azerbaijan. We proposed a consortium of 3+3, Iran, Russia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia when I was foreign minister. Now we can implement that even with American companies, American contractors doing the contracting work. This will provide security and prosperity for the region. We can have cooperation in the nuclear field, in other fields, with our neighbors in the Arab world. This requires a change of paradigm, but it takes two to tango. Iran alone cannot do this. The United States should also recognize that the policy of confrontation, the policy of trying to put pressure on Iran, call it crippling sanctions that during Obama, or call it maximum pressure during Trump 1. None of these has worked. What you see today is Iran more capable. And let me tell you, destroying Iranian nuclear sites did not destroy Iran's nuclear capability, because that capability resides in the minds of Iranian scientists. Now, I know that Israel committed war crimes by killing scientists and their families, but they cannot kill hundreds of people who know how to advance nuclear technology. So we have that technology. It is wishful thinking to believe that by bombing 3 sites, they have destroyed that. So the best way is to put that within a framework. We tried to do that in JCPOA. Now we can do it in a regional framework so that everybody could rest assured
that this will be only for peaceful purposes. I can tell you from somebody who negotiated JCPOA that this is quite possible, provided that we decide to break from the past and look at the future. We are now prisoners of the past, and we are doomed to repeating the failures of the past. We
So
can have a different future.
Dr. ظریف, I'm seeing willingness on your side to change the paradigm, as you put it. You also said it takes two to tango. Do you think Trump, in his current moment where he really wants to strike lots of peace deals around the world, do you see, as an analyst, do you see in Trump someone who might want to strike some sort of a new nuclear deal with Iran or change the paradigm as you're describing?
I think President Trump is quite capable of doing that. He's interested in doing that. There's only one condition: stop listening to Bibi.
And do you think he might be likely to do that? If you were in one of your old jobs, how would you convince him to do that?
I would convince him that his previous... I mean, he has written in the past, and Netanyahu has written in the past, that U.S. withdrawal from JCPOA was motivated by Netanyahu. It didn't serve American interest. It didn't serve global interest. I think we can learn lessons from the past. We don't need to be prisoners of the past, but we can learn lessons from the past. And I think President Trump is in a position to have a different future. And I think that future is within reach, provided that he would stop hoping for things that he will never be able to achieve. Iran is a country, millennia-old country. We have gone through aggressions, invasions, but we have remained, we have stood tall after all of this. We will continue to be a vibrant civilization. We will continue to be a vibrant civilization state, as we have been the oldest civilization state. We will continue to do that. Let's recognize it and try to deal with that. I said there is a need for paradigm shift, but there is a need for paradigm shift on all sides. I hope that all sides are ready to do that.
That's usually how it works. More generally, as an analyst now, when you look at President Trump in his second term, from your perspective, from an Iranian perspective, what do you think his impact on the world has been like?
Well, I think the jury is still out, but up till now hasn't been much achievement. So we should look at different opportunities, different avenues. Bombing Iran was certainly not a way to be the president of peace. And bombing Iran right in the middle of the negotiations of your own envoy. I mean, who will trust the United States from now on? Who will try to negotiate with the United States from now on? I have a hard time convincing people in Iran that diplomacy is worth trying because of what President Trump did. Is that the impact that he wants to leave? Is that the impact? To prove that the only way with the United States is to confront the United States. The only way, the only language that the United States can listen to is a language of force. Is that the trajectory that the United States is looking at? Is that the legacy that they want to leave? What will it gain the American people? Would it be putting making America great again? By bombing other countries? By bullying other countries? By disrespecting the leaders of other countries? Would that make any country great? We learned through our millennia of civilization that respect begets respect.
Let me ask you this. Given everything you're saying, do you think the world is shifting towards some sort of post-unipolar order? Are we entering a different world order, and what does that look like to you?
Well, I believe we never had a unipolar world order. I believe we had illusion of a unipolar world order, and that illusion ended with Baker-Hamilton report of 2006. The United States tried to use its military supremacy from 1990 until 2004 in order to create a unipolar order against the possibilities of the rise of China and other developments. Baker-Hamilton report put an end to that illusion. I think now we are moving to a post-polar world. A post-polar world where you have competing interests in various levels. The level of military power, obviously the United States spends many times more than other countries, probably almost 3 times more than China, 10 times more than Russia and other countries. So it has military capability. But has military capability been able to provide America security? I remember visiting New York. I lived in New York for a long time, as you know, and I remember visiting New York after September 11, and I remember that even in the look of Americans, in New Yorkers, you could not feel security. So the United States government could not even provide security to its own citizens, which is the first order of business for any government. So in the military realm, certainly the United States is the most capable, but that doesn't bring prosperity and security. In the economic realm, we certainly have several actors. But when we get to artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, we have actors that are non-state actors. Now, we have non-state actors in the security field, from ISIS to others who have acted in the security field. Now we have non-state actors in the technology field who are surpassing governments in terms of capability. So we have moved away from our traditional concept of polarity. But there is another element that is important. Polarity requires loyalty. And now countries have understood that loyalties, permanent loyalties, do not exist anymore. People have waken up to the reality that we have issue coalitions, short-term coalitions, long-term alliances are things of the past. So all of these combined will put us in a situation when hegemony is impossible. Hegemonic tendencies may continue to exist both globally and regionally, but we have such a complicated world where it is impossible to have a hegemon, global hegemon or a regional hegemon. So let's try to build a different future. And that different future is a future based on possibilities, not a future based on threats, not a future based on trying to impose. Imposition never resolves problem. As I said, respect begets respect. Imposition begets resistance. That's the equation that I always have in mind. So let's try respect. In my former job as a diplomat, I used to say, we diplomats use all options before we choose the best option or the only available option. Let's not try using different wrong options. Let's see if we can choose the right option.
And we'll have to leave it there. Dr. ظریف, thank you for joining us. We disagree on some things, but that is the whole point of discussions like these. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. And dialogue means trying to listen to one another. We don't have to agree. We just need to understand.
I couldn't agree more on that, at least. And that was Javad ظریف, former foreign minister and former vice president of Iran. Lots more coming up on FP Live. You can register for all of that right here on the site. I'm Ravi Agrawal. Thanks for watching.